Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I am very excited. This is actually the first time I've hosted a webinar before, so no time like quarantine to do this. And I also apologize in advance if you hear construction. The daycare next door has decided now is a great time to replace their roof. And we even had a fire truck here earlier today next door. So lots of activity in Midtown. But hopefully it won't be too disturbing to what we're talking about here today, which is really tools and tips to make your team more effective while working from home. And as my roommate put it, what this is essentially a wrap-up of everything I've heard from my coworkers, conversations I've had with friends who are all managing working from home, as we all are right now. But first, let me introduce myself. So my name is Gabbi Hall. I am the VP of blog content for NCET. And I am also a senior copywriter at Noble Studios, which you heard Dave mention when we were chatting briefly earlier. And we've been working from home for 7 weeks now at Noble. And then prior to moving to Reno, I actually lived out in Boston and worked remotely for an organization called Ski Racing Media, and worked remote, not just in the US, but traveling the world covering alpine ski racing. So I have quite a bit of background working from remote. And I will say doing it at Noble is far superior to doing it with my smaller team. And I think that's because we figured out some of the technology that works. So over the course of the next probably, I'm guessing half hour, maybe 45 minutes, we're going to cover a couple things. First is going to be, questions to ask yourself when looking for solutions to some of these pain points that we're facing. Some of my favorite tools for communication and collaboration, tips for staying connected with your team, which are from my perspective, but I also did, an unofficial poll of some of my coworkers who have submitted things throughout this deck, ways that they're staying connected, staying sane, and that's both at work and just in balancing work and home life when you're in the same space all the time. And then probably a few bad jokes or puns because I tend to do that a lot. And the occasional swear word is known to happen because the Noble culture is very much that way. But thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to dive into the content. So first off, I think when this all started, we asked ourselves, how the hell do we do this? We're all of a sudden asked to go work from home, and many of us are not set up for that. And the first week kind of looked like this. It was chaos. We were running around trying to figure out how we were all going to get to work together. And now, it's pixelated, but now it's this. We're all a little bit settled in. We're working from home. The dog is very comfortable on their couch. I think many of you guys have pets as coworkers. And as we're sorting through this, we're figuring out, okay, we're getting through it. How do we do it better? How do we get more effective? What tools do we need to add to ease the burden of, all of this change that's going on around us? So I would start by asking yourself and asking your team, what pain points are you experiencing right now? What do they miss about being in an office? And is there a way to bring that into a virtual work environment? So before I started showing you guys my deck, you heard me talk about how I really miss whiteboarding at the office. And there's a million other pain points that different industries might be going through. And I think these are 3 questions to ask yourself and your employees that will get the wheels turning about how you might be able to find room for efficiencies. And the first question, once you kind of have some of these pain points defined, I would ask yourself, what problem am I truly trying to solve? Is the pain point that someone feels isolated? Is the pain point that they feel like they can't actually do their job because they're struggling with technology? What is that problem, and get to the core of it? And then once you've identified the problem, checking your existing tools. So one of the things I have found, not only with Noble, but other places I've worked, is that if the solution hasn't been formally introduced by leadership in the company, by royal decree or something like that, employees will often adopt a technology out of necessity. So whether it's, an instant messaging tool, something else. Someone earlier on the call mentioned that people were using Zoom, but it's not as secure, so not great for certain companies who have security concerns. And so check your existing tools, see if they exist, ask employees what they're doing, and then make sure that people aren't using 6 different tools to solve this one problem, because unifying people is going to create a lot more efficiency. And then I think at the end of the day too, don't just add a tool for the sake of adding a tool. There's a lot of companies advertising out there offering solutions to these problems, and some of them are amazing, but adding a bunch of tools all of a sudden is just going to be another change and evolution for your employees to adapt to. And that is inherently challenging with everything else going on. So if you're going to introduce a new tool, make sure that it's the right tool and that it truly is solving a problem. And I think the second key question in this, and I think in everyone's mind before they invest in something, is, can I spend money on it? Is it worth investing budget in? I think the time we're in right now begs the question, is this a short-term or a long-term situation? Is the tool I'm implementing just to get us through, quarantine until we can get back into our offices, or will this change the way that your company operates in the future? And do we need to adopt work-from-home tools that are going to work longer term? And that will inform, whether or not you might need to invest in a more paid version to keep it long-term. How many people in the company does this help? If it's going to impact, the majority of people in the company, it's probably worth investing in, as long as it's going to make everyone more efficient. And then the big thing right now, as we go through COVID-19, is, what are the tools and software companies that are offering extended free trials? You can test these softwares. This deck will be available after the presentation, and I have a link in here to an entrepreneur.com article where they list 200 software companies that are all offering, 90-day, 120-day free trials. And if you are one of those people that thinks, I might just need a short-term option to get me through this, this is a great resource because it has everything from, project management tools to video conferencing, HR. So it really runs the gamut. So this is a great resource. And like I said, the deck will be available afterwards for you to get that link. So now that we've talked a little bit about how the questions you might be asking yourself as you talk about these pain points, I am going to walk through some of the common pain points I have seen. These are common challenges that I think we are all facing. The one thing I wanted to say before I dive into walking through these is I've selected a key few that I'm familiar with that I really like. There is a chat feature in this webinar, and if I'm talking about a pain point and you have a solution that I'm not talking about but you think is really useful, I think it would be really helpful for the group as a whole if you're able to drop whatever that tool is in the chat. Maybe make a mention of why you prefer it to other tools. I think the most important thing I can do with this webinar and that NCET is doing right now is being a resource for the community, and we're all being a resource for each other to get through this. So I do really encourage you guys to feel free to be chatting throughout this and, leaving commentary so that people are aware of all the resources that are being used in our community right now virtually. So with that caveat, I think the first problem is isolation. I mentioned earlier this idea that when we started working from home, and I think it's something that happens when anyone starts working from home, if you don't have people that you live with, it's very easy to put blinders on. And especially if you're not near coworkers, it's even easier because out of sight, out of mind is a very real thing. And it's easy to feel isolated. It's also easy to just distance yourself without even really realizing it. And the solution to that is really video conferencing like we're doing right now. And there's a number of ways to do that. It doesn't have to be as formal as a Zoom meeting. But I think it's important to note why video is so valuable in terms of employee engagement and employee satisfaction. So 85% of people say they build stronger, more meaningful business relationships during in-person business meetings and conferences. In-person business meetings and conferences are clearly not an option right now. So video is the next best thing for reading social cues, for developing rapport outside of, little instant messages off on the side. And it's really important for connecting with your employees and with your team to check in on them through this time. And second to that, 49% of people say they prefer these in-person meetings because they allow for more complex strategic thinking. And I've seen this a lot with Noble, and I'm sure some of my friends who have joined today on the line can attest to this, but sure, you can write things down in an email, you can have an instant messaging conversation, but nothing will ever replace having a video call and being able to talk through something. So obviously the proof is in the pudding, in the numbers, and they do prefer in person, so video is a good alternative to that in this virtual age. So first off, we're on Zoom. This won't probably be anything new for people, but what I like about Zoom, and for those who don't use it at their companies, there are free and paid versions. To my point of testing things, you can test all of the various video conferencing softwares out there before you pick one and invest in it. Zoom offers group calls, like I said, up to 100 people for up to 40 minutes. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurial type people using that free version and doing like free workout classes or free half-hour seminars. So there are ways to leverage Zoom, one, internally, but also if you're thinking about new ways like this to engage, prospective clients, current clients, things like that, Zoom is a great option. You can share screens as we're doing now, but you can also share tablets and phones, so it's a super mobile tool. And you can virtually whiteboard as well, which is a great option. And there's a lot of tools for virtual whiteboarding, but that does live within the Zoom interface. And then, of course, virtual backgrounds, which I've seen some of you playing with. This is actually a screen grab from one of our all-company meetings, but one of the ways we've built company culture is building Noble-specific Zoom backgrounds. So we've had a variety come out over the course of the 7 weeks. And it's a fun way to get people, excited and to feel that camaraderie around the company, even though we're not all in the office together. So Zoom backgrounds are kind of an easy, fun way to do that and get people excited when they hop into meetings. This particular one was right at the early parts of quarantine where we were encouraging people to stay home, and it says staying home means Nevada. We had that statewide tie-in as well, which is great because we have an office in Reno and Las Vegas. And then the second option, and in my opinion, it's a little less superior, but I like it because it's integrated, is the Microsoft Teams solution. So that's a video solution that does have free and paid versions. And what's nice about Microsoft Teams is it's built in with the Office 365 suite. So in that sense, it allows for a lot more integration with, files you may be working on. It has an instant messaging tool built in. It has video chatting. It does have mobile options as well. I have found that between Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Slack, and Zoom has the best video quality. So from a professional perspective, it's definitely the most superior, just from a clarity and consistency view. But I do, like I said, like this that it's integrated, and this is one of those tools that you may not know exists, but you may already be paying for if your company uses Office 365. Okay, so our second problem is ad hoc connections. And by ad hoc connections, what I really mean is these one-off casual conversations where someone would come and lean over your desk and say, hey, I wanted to run something by you. And that's where instant messaging comes into play. Now, 45% of respondents in a Report Linkers poll said instant messaging made them more productive. And from my experience, I would attribute that primarily to the one-off questions. They don't get lost in email. They don't have to be as formal as email either. And I think that's really key because emails, I think that there's more pressure to, edit and make sure you're responding like ultra professionally, which is all well and good, but something like an instant messaging tool allows for that more casual back and forth that you might have in an office space. And 71% of employees in another poll said they rely on instant messaging applications. So if you're not using one in-house, my guess is that people are using their own version of it, and it's better to control where all of that's happening, whether, it's Google Chat or Slack or something like that. But creating consistency across that instant messaging platform is going to bring your company together and really improve employee engagement, but also just efficiencies. So people aren't looking for conversations in 900 different locations. So the one we use at Noble and that I really like is Slack. And there's a few reasons I like Slack. They have a huge suite of integrations. For example, we use Google Drive, and we use that for spreadsheets, Word docs, all of that. And if you're collaborating with others and you have this integration set up in Slack, anytime someone comments in your document, you get a notification. You get it much more real time than email. You also have integrations with things like Giphy, which is more of a fun one, but you can have integrations with Giphy, your Outlook calendar to mark when you're in a meeting. And I think that integration system is super helpful, and it's one of the most expansive I've seen. And I think second to that is the opportunity for divided conversations. So when we talk about collaboration in the current state of things, if you just have general one-off conversations happening with individuals, you lose the thread of collaboration. And so, for example, with us, we have channels by client and then channels by interest. So the one I have screen grabbed here is the Some Good News channel, which we started for quarantine. And it's not work-based at all. It's rather like a culture building channel where we can share good news. So in this case, it was a story about adorable puppies at the aquarium, anti-bullying, the Some Good News show with John Krasinski. So there's been, various types of content shared in this channel, but it's really about building that camaraderie and things we might talk about in the office and doing that in a virtual setting. Slack also offers one-on-one video chats. And so speaking to the idea of video conferencing, what I like about Slack is it allows for a really instant ad hoc connection. I can sign on and talk to another writer really quickly via video, and I don't need a custom link like I would with a Zoom meeting. So it adds a level of convenience for video chatting. And then at the paid level, you can even do, full group team chats and screen sharing and a lot of the features that Zoom has. So big fan of Slack, and there's a million recommendations online on how to set up channels, but having them by clients and by interest has been super helpful in breaking up what conversations you need to follow and all that kind of stuff. And then my second favorite option is Google Chat. I am a big fan, as I think most people are, of having solutions that fit under one umbrella. So to my point about Microsoft Teams and the video chatting that happens there, Google in the G Suite also has its own instant messaging option that has a lot of the same features as Slack. So you can set up conversations by groups or topics. It integrates really nicely with all the documents you might have in Google Drive and all the various elements of the Google Suite. And that makes it really easy to continue collaborating. It's all built into the same system. It keeps everything under one roof. And I think Google also has the benefit of having been around forever. A lot of people have some level of exposure to the Google platform. So, with Slack, they might have to learn an entirely new tool, whereas implementing something like a Google Chat may take less in terms of onboarding time because people are already familiar with a lot of the functionality of Google, whether it's that they have an Android phone or use Gmail or any number of things. So something to keep in mind as you are picking solutions for your company is what are people most familiar with and what could ease the learning curve and what systems are already in place. And I wanted to share this. I actually discovered this morning. It's imisstheoffice.eu. And this is a project by the Kids Creative Agency. It's not a tool that will necessarily help your effectiveness, but I like the idea that it could build a connection to the office because it plays office white noise. So as you can see on the screen, there's all sorts of little icons and you can select, I want to hear like a couple people, and like you'll hear people typing on computers and things like that, and it creates office white noise. And I just thought it was a fun project, and I was listening to it this morning. I think it did help kind of put me in a work headspace. So something interesting, to share with your teams if they miss being in the office. One other tip I wanted to share, and this is the first sample of tips that my coworkers have shared, is to clarify in the chat, it is .eu. It's a European agency. So .eu, not .edu. So one of the tips that my coworkers had where people are to the point of being heads down. It's really easy to forget to stand up and move around like you would between meetings at an office. And so every time I finish a meeting or deliverable, which ends up being, every couple hours or so, I get up and move around for a few minutes. It's been great to get moving. So I think the best tip here is to encourage your employees, even though I think some people feel guilty working from home when they get up and take a break from the computer. That's something we'd be doing really naturally in the office. We'd be getting up from our desk. We would be moving around and having side conversations with our coworkers in the kitchen. So reminding your employees that they should get up throughout the day, break up their day, and not just be, talking to a computer like we are here for 8 hours straight. So third challenge I think a lot of people face is accountability and organization. I don't know, in this audience how large your companies are, but at Noble we're 60 plus people around the world, and I think it can be challenging to track to-dos if you don't have a formal system in place. When I worked at Ski Racing Media, we would track our editorial calendar in a spreadsheet, which is all well and good, but you lose a lot of the smaller efforts, a lot of those little tasks that you might throw on a Post-it. I don't know if anyone else is a Post-it person, but I've got like a zillion of these taped to my desk right now. And so finding a solution for task management while everyone's working from home so that at a glance, anyone can see what's going on without all the hassle of having to make sure maybe an Excel document is up to date, and something that's a little more drag and drop and a little more user-friendly. So I threw this down as a joke, but 100% of people in projects benefit from a task management tool. My roommate is a project manager at Noble Studios, and I was asking her if she had any research, and she was like, 100% of people benefit from this. So coming from a project manager at Noble, she's a huge believer in task management, and I think it does help everyone stay accountable and on top of what's happening. I think particularly if you're managing a project, a task management solution is really important. You can at a glance get a high-level view of what's in progress and going on for your employees. There's a couple free tools. The first one that I really like is Trello. It's very, I guess I'd call it like the meat and potatoes of task management. It's not super fancy, but it does allow you to do a lot, and it's super user-friendly. And you can set up a Trello board, have these different columns with various tasks. They can be set up in statuses and phases. There is just a ton of opportunities to track things, assign them to people, leave comments on what's actually been going on in status updates. And it's a good thing to review if you're doing, I don't want to call them Scrum meetings because that's an agile term, but essentially if you're having check-in meetings a couple of days a week, the Trello board is a good source of truth for those meetings. So you're not just asking people what they're doing today, you're able to look at the board and say, what's the status of this? Do we need to move something? And be a little bit more fluid as you're collaborating from home. The second tool option, and I actually don't have personal experience with Asana, but its reputation precedes it. And I have a lot of friends who have really advocated for Asana, and they do have a free version, which to me was really important, that a lot of these solutions are free versions, but that can also scale up. So with Asana, just like Trello, you can manage tasks and personal to-dos, view lists, boards, and calendars. So there's a variety of views based on how your employees work and how you best intake information. You can create assignments and track due dates, move quickly through multiple stages, and then in the free version, you can collaborate with up to 15 people. So depending on the size of your team, the free solution may cover you. But like I said, then if you really love it and you want to scale over time, Asana does scale with you, which is really nice. So I prefer Trello. That's one I have experience with. It's a little down and dirty, easy to get going. Not a lot to get started. But Asana is a really long-standing, a really long-standing tool, a ton of history, and a lot of people swear by it. So I wanted to mention it in the webinar. From a project management perspective, and this did come from my roommate, she really encourages people to make sure they set boundaries on their time. It's easy to let work and life blend together and to not really truly work 8 hours, and that can be really toxic. And so, one, it's important for individual employees to protect their time, but second to that, I think one of the best things Noble has done has been really advocated and told us, hey, it's important that you set boundaries on your time. Don't be working, 12-hour days every day. You're going to burn out. Taking PTO still, if people need to take PTO, that should still be okay right now. And so that was kind of a tip from our project manager in terms of keeping your task management going and then also protecting your time outside of the office. Okay, next problem, employee engagement. So I think it's clear by some of these other topics, it's very easy to become disengaged from your company and from those goals when you're not in an office, especially if you're not used to working in a remote environment. And so our solution here is to maintain meaningful connections. And in this section, I'm not actually going to talk about a software tool so much as a practice. So 3 times, employees who have a regular one-on-one meeting with their managers are 3 times more likely to be engaged. And so really what I'm advocating for as part of all of these challenges that we're facing is more investment in regular check-ins with employees. Investing in that one-on-one time with people you manage, in your peers, making sure that not only are people okay with what they're doing at work, but making sure that they are okay in life, because right now life is work and it's all in one space. And so that one-on-one time is so valuable. So if you are doing one-on-ones and you're needing to provide feedback, begin that conversation with, kind of generic questions like, how are you doing? What are you working on today? Get them talking so you can really sit there and listen. And I think if you need to give constructive criticism, making sure that you have an understanding of what frame of mind they're in and what challenges they may be facing that you may not be aware of because you're not in an office together and you can't see everything that's going on. Doing check-ins via video whenever possible. Casual Slacks are all well and good, but like we said before, the nonverbal cues that you get from video are so critical. And doing a video chat, whether it's Google Meet, Slack, or any number of platforms, getting that face-to-face time is super critical. And then I think the other challenge with one-on-ones, and one of the reasons people may not do them as often, is they often don't have a preset agenda. I mean, in my experience, I've had a really good experience at Noble with one-on-ones. At past companies, one-on-ones have just been, hey, what's going on? And there's not a great point to it. It's not really geared towards personal growth. And so there's opportunity to come to those one-on-ones with preset agendas, with a mission, and create more meaningful connections with your employees and coworkers that will ultimately keep everyone more engaged in the goals of the company, especially through this challenging and tumultuous time. I think one of the coolest things about meaningful connections is that actually transcends the workspace. And one of my coworkers, a designer, has a young boy, so cute, and she said, I've learned how important it is to have more than 45 minutes with my toddler each day. I get up and start work early. I also got rid of an hour plus of commuting and daycare drop-off, so I can have a couple hours with him in the afternoon, evening. And I think this actually looks the more positive side of the whole work from home situation. It has given people more time with the people that they love. And I felt like that's an important element to hit on, and part of these meaningful connections is, as we're creating meaningful connections at work, it's happening at home as well, and protecting our time to be able to keep those meaningful connections in all aspects of our life is hugely important to staying sane in these times. And this is another idea, not idea I had, but one of our digital marketing specialists shared that she's been doing handwritten letters to her friends and family. So on a personal level, she's been handwriting notes to stay connected, not just doing Zoom happy hours or Zoom meetings. And I feel like this has a lot of potential in the professional world. I think people love getting mail these days because mostly when you get it, you get scary, bills. Or I got a letter from the IRS about the stimulus check the other day, but I saw it from the IRS and it gave me a panic attack. And doing something nice for your employees in the way of sending a snail mail thank you letter for all that they do for your company is a huge opportunity to connect with them in a new way and sort of brighten their day. So even though this one directly applies to a personal relationship, I think sending a letter is kind of a cool way to build a meaningful connection with your company and employees if you have the bandwidth to do that and just do something different and special. And I think finally, I believe this is my last one, I should have numbered these, but maintaining company culture and making time for fun. This is something we've really worked on at Noble, since the beginning of this stay-at-home order. How are we going to maintain what makes Noble so awesome, which is things like having a beer on Fridays at 3:30, which we call Beer 30. So I pulled this stat, 12% of happy employees are 12% more productive. So as part of that employee engagement, keeping people excited about their work they're doing is going to help productivity and make them more invested. So like I said, happy hours is a really big part of the Noble culture. We have a keg, and at 3:30 on Fridays, we have Beer 30, and everyone can go grab a beer, and it's a chance for everyone to kind of relax at the end of the week, talk with their friends, and it's like I said, it's a huge part of the Noble culture. The keg is one of the things you see when you tour on an interview, and so we've been doing that virtually via Zoom, and you might think a happy hour via Zoom would be kind of awkward because happy hours are notoriously very chatty and it's loud and crazy, but we've found activities to make it a little bit more manageable. We did, much to, I think, our embarrassment, we did karaoke where we all sang a song together, which was pretty funny. We'll be doing trivia at some point. So finding ways to bring your employees together for a half-hour meeting, whether it's with a cocktail or not, and doing something that's not necessarily related to getting work done is great. We also did a Spirit Week, which was really fun. That's what the screenshot is of. We had Crazy Hat Day, which is why you see people in wigs and multiple hats and all sorts of crazy stuff. But the Spirit Week was a really fun way just to like joke around in the morning. People would send photos, and there was a contest, and there was a winner at the end of the week for like the most spirited employee. So you can still do a lot of these things that you might do in an office, but just find ways to execute them virtually has been really great for the company culture. Trivia, I kind of briefly mentioned on the last slide, so I won't dwell on it, but there's tools like triviamaker.com where you can set up your own trivia game and various like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style and things like that. But a good way to virtually engage your employees, you could do things like, the state of Nevada, you could do company history, you could do industry specific trivia and then do prizes. And my thought, that wasn't very eloquent, but my thought would be that, then you'd have prizes. So you can send virtual gift cards to somewhere like Evo's Coffee Shop, things like that, which also helps you support a local business. So you kind of get twofold. You get employee engagement, you get to support a local business, have a little bit of fun with your team. So lots of tools out there to be able to do that, whether it's, Jeopardy style, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style. One of the habits that one of my coworkers has adopted in order to maintain her sanity and kind of take on more of that culture of being able to go on a run at lunch. That is a big part of Noble, is that we have a cardio crew. They go running at lunch. A lot of people are very into fitness. So she's made working out at lunch a habit to break up her day. And she also makes her lunch instead of eating hand chicken, which her hand chicken is like her chicken nuggets that she like snacks on throughout the day. And so finding those activities that are purposeful and that break up your day are so important to everyone. I think, like I said, I've been working a lot on my patio. I try to take lunch away from my desk, doing things like that to keep your sanity. And I liked her joke about her hand chicken, because I think a lot of us, maybe not a lot of us, I'm totally guilty of eating lunch at my desk when I'm at the office. And so if that's her way of staying sane, is stepping away from her desk and not eating hand chicken, then that's an awesome opportunity. Encouraging your employees to find ways to do the same with whatever their hobbies or passions are. Boom, half hour. That's awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I've seen some good conversation in the group chat. I would love to stay in touch if you have comments, questions, want to start a conversation. I'm Here Goes Gabbi on Twitter and Instagram. I would love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. You can find me Gabbi Hall. Yeah, would love to stay in touch with everyone. And this, like I said at the beginning, getting us all through this is going to be a team effort. And so we should continue to have these conversations. I did, before I close it off and hand it back to Dave, want to mention the next webinar that's happening next week, which Dave might have been chiming in on this next, but I threw in a slide. There's a webinar on your action plan for the economic recovery with Marie Gibson on May 6th. It's open to the public, 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, just like this. And, you know, Dave can probably allude more to what's going to be in there, but the series has been really amazing, and I'm sure a lot of you have been attending these, so hopefully you'll attend Marie's as well.